BP's 81/40 after 500 cc's of NS4 morphine. She has a wound distance from a recent operation.
Hi, my name's Dr. Cummings. I'm going to be doing your surgery. Does it hurt anywhere else?
No.
Can you tell me about the procedure that
I am Abby's mom. I'm Dana. What happened?
I'm Dr. Alistair. This is Dr. Clemens, head of surgery.
The accident opened up Abby's abdominal wall, so she's in critical condition. We're going to take her up to the OR. Does your daughter have any medical problems or history of
No,
surgery?
no, she's always been completely healthy.
You sure? Because
Yes.
she's got...
Right here. Wait.
Abby, we need you to stay
gonna be
calm and
okay.
bleed. It's just
Talk
going
to
to
your
get...
doctors in good hands. I'll update you as soon as
Right
we can.
here. Wait.
Abby, listen to me. You had a surgery. I need to know
You
exactly...
can't tell her. She doesn't know.
You know what?
I had an abortion in Juarez. Please don't let me die.
Welcome to Build. We're happy to have you back.
Thank you so much. Hey, thank you.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
So season 4 of The Night Shift. Can you believe it? Has it
Give my
gone
cheek a
pretty...
pinch.
I know. Look at you there. I'll just pinch her cheek then.
Yeah, season 4, which is I'm incredibly proud of. You know, they don't give you 4 seasons very easy these days. And, you know, we were kind of the little show that could on NBC 4 years ago. And there's just something, man, there's like such a great chemical thing between all the cast and and our writers and producers have a really great knack for stories and characters that work, and they're not afraid to lean away from stuff that might not be working as well and lean into the stuff that makes the show great. And so yeah, heading into the 4th season, I feel like it's better than it's ever been.
Did you have a feeling when you first signed on to the show that it had that appeal and something special about it?
You know, the thing that was obvious right away was the chemistry between this group. And I was working on a different show at the time, and I came in just to do a handful of episodes. And at the time, it was like playing kind of the foil to the hero of the show. And, you know, so Scott was dating Jordan, who used to date TC, and she and he still had kind of unresolved stuff between them. And in a lot of shows, and even this show could have gone this way, where I came in and I was just kind of in their way. But even after she wound up leaving me and going back with him, the relationship between the three just had this great life to it. And my character, I think, added, you know, he was this, he's the one doctor in the hospital who never served in the military. And whereas these guys were all battlefield medics and have a little bit of this, like, by any means necessary way of practicing medicine, my guy is a little bit more by the book and classically trained. And so the friction of that has been something that's been really cool to have alive in the show. And this love triangle, even though we're not actually together, you know, it's amazing to be telling a story where there's, you know, on the surface, it's like we're running through elevators and people are dying and we need to save their lives. But always alive between us is the history between us and these relationships. And so the show is just really rich in that way, where there's the immediate thing of, like, people are dying and we need to save them. But there's always this stuff floating just beneath the surface between all of us.
Yeah, I think that's what makes these medical dramas in particular successful, is because every week there's something new and exciting, a new case or something to solve, but then you still have this attachment to the characters and their story.
Yeah.
You might not get it every episode, but it kind of unveils itself throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, there's a reason why there's always hospital shows on TV, and I feel like, you know, in many ways it's like these are stories about things that could happen to us or people we love. And so it's the whole world of medicine and life within a hospital is something that I feel like all of us deal with at some point in our lives. And so there's this endless curiosity about it. But the medical stories, as intense as they are on our show, they only take you so far. And you, you know, your window into all of it is through the lives of, like, this family. I've always described the show as like a family show set inside a hospital, because the relationships are so full and intense. And at the same time, you know, when we're standing over a body and doing surgeries, you know, it's hugely important to us as performers and to the producers and writers to make sure that it feels real, and our focus is on the work we're doing and the life that needs saving. And there's lesser versions of it where we'd be kind of just moving our hands around and just talking about like who annoyed who at breakfast. But they really set out to make a medical show that looked and felt as real and urgent as possible.
Yeah. And what kind of research do you do for not only your role playing a doctor, but for each case that that Dr. Scott does on the show?
Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Scott.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. I get to say that. Tons, I would say, of one of the amazing things about doing a show like this in the year 2017 is we have Google and we have YouTube, and so literally all these procedures that we're performing on the show, all the medical jargon that we have to say, all the terminology, and the procedures themselves are things that you can go research. And so I do that. I'll get a script, and whatever it is I need to be doing or whatever the case is about, I just start digging around. The writers, there's I think one ER doctor who's also a writer on the staff. And so a lot of these stories are coming from her personal experience. So, and the craziest stuff, the stuff that you think is like, how is that even possible, is stuff that really happened, that she lived through. And so, the scripts are pretty in-depth and realistic, but then, it's important to me and to all of us to honor the people that are really doing this work and be as authentic as possible. So I dig around and I'll watch procedures that my character is performing, and just the littlest terms of a piece of equipment or a procedure or a test or a medicine. I just Google it and learn as much about it as I can, so that when I'm talking about it as Dr. Scott, I don't seem like a fraud.
I'm like, I wish I could bring something up that to stump you to make sure you did your research, but
go for it.
Well, this week, so last week was the premiere of season 4.
Yes.
And it kind of ended on a little bit of a cliffhanger with a roller coaster accident.
Right.
And so the clip we saw was that patient, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So cliffhanger and kind of a 2-part season opener. Yeah. And a ton going on at the hospital. At the end of last season, there was like a huge, there was a bunch of tumultuous stuff where the character Paul, played by Robert Bailey Jr., the awesome Robert Bailey Jr., his father, who's played by James McDaniel, has his huge hospital group has taken over the hospital, and there's a big walkout, and this really tight-knit family is kind of broken apart. And so the family drama that takes place within this hospital is kind of fractured, and everything's thrown into a state of disarray, and no one quite knows what place they are going to have or want to have at the hospital under this guy, Julian. And my character, Scott, is, I think, in many ways, some people see him as opportunistic and kind of cynical, but for me, I feel like he's a guy who, he sees, from how he sees it, he's like the grown-up in the room. And things aren't going great right now, but we have an obligation to this place and to these patients, and we need to stick it out. And everyone else at the beginning of last week's episode is in different stages of, trying to figure out whether they still want to be here and how they would want to be here. And so little by little, they started coming back together at the end of that episode. And so things are going to start to look a little bit more normal, although Topher, who is at the center of this little family, hasn't been back. And tomorrow night's episode is that, I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, there's kind of a major development with his story. Yeah.
Is it hard for you to keep these spoilers
Yes.
inside and not share them with all his fans?
It is. How much money you got on it? Yeah. I feel like, in talking about the show, obviously, you just want people to be living it out in the moment, watching it, and not have heard about stuff. That's how I want to watch shows. And so, yeah, but everything just moves so quickly. It's like we're still shooting this season of the show. We're about 3/4 of the way through, and so yeah. So I feel like I love talking about the show because I just love being part of it. It's such a great cast and group, and the show just gets better and better. It's like a lot of shows, and even ones I've been on. You come up with like a really great idea, and then you get into production, and somehow, as you move forward, it can be hard to sustain the level of quality, and so a lot of shows have a trajectory where things kind of unravel a little bit, or like have a sophomore slump or something like that. And for this show, I feel like our second year was better than the first, and third was better than the second, and this is the best season we've made yet.
I think it's too because the cast, you guys probably form, like you said, a family, that you're more comfortable with each other, you're more comfortable in your roles.
Yeah.
Do you find that kind of playing someone for going into 4 seasons now has helped you really dig in and you understand your character?
Yeah, and it's one of the things I love about doing television as opposed to, say a film where you can spend years with characters and you wind up just getting so specific and detailed, and while there's a comfort level, what you hope is that the writers are, evolving the character and having things change and constantly kind of throwing new things at a character, and so that it feels like life, like you're constantly kind of experiencing new things and changing, and but there becomes a bit of I don't know if I'd call it a comfort level, but just a knowing and an understanding. You've been living in this character's skin for a long time. And for an audience, I think the storytelling, as you get into like 4th season, 5th, 6th of a series, things can get really, really fun because there's so much that you don't have to talk about that just we all know. Yeah. The nature of a person. And so, for us, I think it comes first as actors where we start to get a sense over time intuitively about how we would react to certain things. And while we want to constantly be surprised, there's just that sort of knowing that comes with being with a character for a long time. And then I think the audience winds up falling into that. And I think that's really what's most appealing about TV series is it just feels like you live life alongside these people for a period of time. And it's one of the things that draws me to doing television.
Some of these medical dramas last a long time. You could be on the night shift for a couple years because you got Grey's Anatomy is on 13, I think.
Yeah.
ER was on for like 10 years.
Yeah, we're just getting started.
But isn't that great how these shows, like we said before, there's always something fresh. It never gets stale because it is a medical drama where there's so much you can explore. Yeah,
I mean, and there's just, like I said, the craziest and most sort of inventive medical cases and accidents and traumas and things we deal with are things that really happened. And yeah, there's just no end really to that. So they're really good at feeling where these characters would organically wind up going. And like Jill's character Jordan and my character Scott, they gave my character my name.
I was like, that's such an original name.
I think they didn't want to give me too much to have to remember. They didn't want to call me John and have me be like, who's that? So like, again, like they were together in the beginning, but as the story was getting told, it looked pretty obvious that she was going to wind up going back with TC. And then, I don't know, in a lot of shows and a lot of stories, that had been the end of it. But there's just some kind of great little thing where they keep on like bouncing off each other and almost rediscovering each other for the first time. But it none of it feels canned or forced. It just, and I guess also because it's not the main story, because it's just sort of underneath a lot of these other stories. Like when we're running down a hallway, saving somebody's life, our baggage or our like will we like get together again or not is kind of way down on the list, but it's there. And again, yeah, over time, it feels like it's kind of cool to be in the 4th season of a show and feel like there's this whole life and so much texture to all of these stories and relationships that have been created over the past few years.
Sure. And it seems that you guys cover incredible topics too. Like tonight, you're going to be discussing abortion.
Yeah.
I'm assuming from the clip.
Yeah.
Is that something that drew you into? Is the fact that you're giving audiences a little bit more information about topics that aren't always discussed?
Yeah. I mean, on the surface, there's like, because it's a hospital show, there's all these, kind of crazy medical conditions or injuries or things that are just really interesting to learn about. But this show does take on some bigger emotional issues that, and really complicated ones. Last year we did a story about a potentially racially biased police shooting. And so there's some of this kind of torn from the headline stuff that is, I suppose delicate or controversial or, and this, there's this story in tomorrow night's episode with this young girl who had an abortion and her mom doesn't know about it. And so to be on a show that takes on issues like that is meaningful to me. One of the biggest undercurrents of our show throughout the course of the last few years from the beginning is that a lot of these doctors are ex-military, and they served as army medics in Iraq or Afghanistan, and so the show has a huge undercurrent of that military theme, and we tell a ton of stories, especially this season. There's, the hospital winds up kind of partnering with the local VA, and, they're so kind of overtaxed, and there's such a burden upon them, and they're having, they need the help getting that work done. And we do an episode that we just finished, episode 7, is an episode that's entirely devoted to the military. All of the guest actors, everyone other than the core cast, all of our guest stars are all ex-military, are all veterans. And so, I mean, that's an incredibly important issue, and it feels silly to even call it an issue. It's an important thing to be taking proper care of the people that have served. And so to be on a show that takes that seriously and tells those stories, not just the glorified versions, but the ways in which it's incredibly challenging and the work that has to get done, I'm really proud of that too.
What a show to be a part of, and congrats on being a part of it. And
thank you.
And I have to say, I have to celebrate your Live with Kelly run too, because you've been so great on that too. You've been around for a few months now on our screens.
Yeah, that was really fun. I love, before I ever acted, I was studying broadcast, and I thought I'd maybe do something in news or sportscasting or something. And then acting happened, and I fell in love with it. But yeah, I feel like I want to switch seats.
Yeah, you should come back and try to host a few bills.
Yeah, I love it. I really love it.
Because I have to say, I thought you were definitely in the running. I was expecting them to announce your name to be her co-host.
No way.
You were Fred Savage, but
yeah,
Ryan Seacrest. He doesn't have enough going on. He needed another job.
Snuck in at the last second. Yeah, I was. It was a great experience. I loved her, and she's awesome. Actually, funny enough, her husband Mark is a guest star on the night shift this year. Yeah,
awesome.
So he's on it through the first, I guess, most of the season.
Just tell Kelly you swapped. You wanted Mark.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
you get
right.
Ryan, I get Mark. Whatever.
But I would love to do more of it. I feel like it'll be part of my future. I don't know where and when it'll show up or how much I'll lean into that, but. Yeah, at some point, I think I'd probably like to do a lot more of it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And before I go to audience Q&A, I have to, of course, talk about Party of Five, one of my favorite series of all time. Everybody give a round of applause for Party of Five. We were talking a little bit backstage about how you and Nev Campbell were together last night for a little reunion.
I know, and it's funny because we've seen each other a bunch because we're still really great friends, but none of us have appeared on camera together, I don't think, since the last episode. And so it was kind of, we've been like photographed together, but not a show or anything like that. So yeah, it was really cool. And I've, the show now, Netflix picked it up. And so having it be on such a visible platform where people can have access to it has been pretty cool. I was saying earlier to someone, the show's never really gone away out of my life because I just kind of hear about it often from people and get stopped, and probably more for that than almost anything. It's just really resonated with people. But, it's kind of getting a whole new sort of life now because a lot of the audience that watched it the first time around are watching it with their families and their kids, which is pretty trippy. And or just rewatching it again, and yeah, it's there's a lot of things that can follow you around through your life, and to be followed around by something that I really love so much and have such great feelings about is cool.
That's great, because some people are like, I don't want to talk about this and this and this in my past, but now with Netflix, like you said, there's this resurgence of these 90s shows that we all loved, and early 2000s. And I think people can get, followed around by something that they're less proud of. And but yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I'm glad that show is, and it kind of still holds up. It's a show about people, and it took place in kitchens, so it's not like there's a bunch of special effects or anything that dates it. And it was about, talking about like the night shift, it was about stuff that people really deal with and important things, and made people kind of think a little bit about life, and offered up some ways to ideas that were important enough to, not just the big episodes where we were talking about alcoholism or abortion or cancer, but just moment to moment, it looked and sounded like real life, which is what we're all trying to accomplish with these shows. So it's cool that it still resonates with people all these years later. Yeah, I'm glad other new fans get to watch it, because it's one of my faves. All right, guys, I want to open it up to you. Who's first?
Hi, Scott.
Hi.
I was just wondering, since you had to do research about being a doctor, and now upcoming episodes you're going to be working with a VA hospital, have you ever visited a VA hospital?
I have, but it's been a while. We a group of us had a plan. I'm pretty sure there's a VA hospital where we're shooting in Albuquerque. And we've had vets on set with us, and which has been incredibly helpful, and not only from the information standpoint about their experience, but just energetically having them be taking part in the production of the show is incredibly meaningful to us. So I haven't. I want to spend more time doing that, because I really, one of the great things about doing shows like this is you get connected to things that you might not have been as connected to otherwise. And while we're telling an audience who watches the show how important these things are, I feel like it affects us, obviously, as well. And like I said, I don't feel like there's anything more important than honoring service of the men and women who did serve, and especially the ones that are struggling in one form or another.
Who's next?
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
I'm good. My question is, because you are known for mostly doing dramas, do you ever take any elements of the characters you've played before and bring them to the night shift?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say that I really think about it in those terms. Like each character winds up being their own person, and but there's always stuff. Having played a bunch of characters, there's always like bits and pieces from certain people that you probably recognize in a character. This character looks exactly like Bailey from Party of Five, only older. But yeah, no, I think you try, and the fun of it is just attacking each new character and trying to find what makes them unique.
I think we have time for one last question. Here we go.
Hey, Scott.
Hey.
So I know that you also played a doctor on Everwood, so I was just wondering, like, did you bring anything to that character with the character you play on Night Shift?
Well, so it's actually I guess it's my third time playing a doctor. So I played a doctor on Everwood. I did a doctor on a short-lived show that for ABC called The Nine. It was like a bank hostage show. You don't see a lot of bank hostage shows. And I played a surgeon on that. And that was actually when I did that one. So the doctor on Everwood was more like family medicine. He wasn't a surgeon. And so there was less medical stuff to attend to. But when I played a surgeon on The Nine, which was like a year later after Everwood, I shadowed a surgeon at UCLA for a day in preparation for that, which was a life-changing experience, and stood from here to here watching 2 open heart surgeries on kids on a I think it was a 8-year-old girl and a 2.5-week-old boy, this tiny little baby that they were doing open heart surgery on, and it gave me like an immense amount of respect for what these people do, and definitely, fills me with this sense. Every day I walk on the set making this show, The Night Shift, I want to commit myself to authentically portraying what it is these people do. As schmachters, like, we're not really doctors, so if anything goes wrong in the next few minutes, you don't want me trying to help you. Like splinters and basic stuff like that. I can get you an aspirin. You don't want me performing surgery on you. But that research I did for The Nine, I think, was instrumental in a couple of things. One of the things is this sense of people talk about doctors surgeons in particular having like a God complex, and what I've kind of felt in that moment, standing over this 2-week-old baby with his chest open, was I want my surgeon to have a God complex. Like, I want my surgeon thinking he is the saver of life and the most powerful being in the world. Like, I don't want him feeling insecure. So tapping into that sense of, and this guy was like completely altruistic. He was like a decent, good guy. But when push came to shove, he felt like he was the most powerful person in the world, and this open chest of a baby boy just didn't faze him. He was doing his job and he was saving this life, and that's something that I feel like I very much brought to this character, because everyone in the hospital has their own version of that, but I think Scott is, to me, the most distilled, distinct version of that God complexy thing. And there's an episode we do in a few weeks talking about the evolution of characters over time. When Scott came into this hospital, he was kind of super rigid and formal and resisted anybody in his way. And little by little, over the past couple of seasons, through his own desire to be part of this family and this team, and some crazy things that have happened to him in his life. There was this horrible accident where he paralyzed a kid by mistake. And so layers of him have kind of been stripped away over time, and he's become a much more vulnerable character. And when we pick up this season, we find him wanting to kick the pendulum back in the other direction, and feeling like that vulnerability is kind of coming at the expense of him feeling the way he wants to feel in a room. And we do, I think it's episode 4, there's this really, really intense episode that focuses kind of around Scott finding an opportunity to get that person that he was back. And it comes through this intense experience with this young girl who's flatlined on his table. So excited about that episode, and really excited about the whole season. it's a really thrilling, suspenseful.
Said you're leaving us on
emotional season.
cliffhangers,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
You're making us.
Thursdays at
Yeah.
10.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens with Dr. Scott this season. I'm sure you guys can't either. We appreciate you being here talking about the incredible show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. You're awesome.
Thanks, guys.